Ooh, while you were watching 7-hour Warhammer videos to fall asleep to, I was studying the Blade. No, I'm just kidding. I was reading Phil Kelly's Farsight, Crisis of Faith, and let me tell you, I enjoy the Tau in such a way now because I'm reading this book that I am just quite frankly enamored with the faction as a whole. That's not to say that they're my new favorite because listen, if I were to read every new faction book and get interested in it, then literally every faction would be my new faction at any given week because I'm susceptible to recency bias like anyone else. But that being said, the Tau and Farsight are just amazingly cool, but I am of the opinion that Farsight makes the Tau cool and not the other way around. I know that's a cold take. I know it's not the craziest thing that's ever been said, but the Tau are awesome. And quite frankly, if you haven't read the book, please go read it, Audible or do physical copy. But I really can't recommend it enough from the first chapter of getting introduced to who Farsight is and how it gets his blade on Molech. Super, super interesting stuff. But I also want to preface this by saying Crisis of Faith is a little bit old, is kind of old. And so, yeah, the faster than light travel and some other stuff may be shuffled out of canon or maybe has been changed. And for the sake of this video, don't worry about that. If we're here, I'm not the type of nerd to obsess over that. I know some people are, but for the sake of this video, don't worry about what's canon or what's not canon, because that's a whole conversation for someone who's more up to date with their Warhammer knowledge than this little goblin here. So let's talk about the Tau. God, dude. So right off the bat, my experience with the Tau is extremely limited, only from memes, right? Which is, that's how it goes. But I started reading, and the Tau are so similar to the Imperium that it's quite frankly frightening. It is insane. So, you're probably like, Connor, what does that mean, bro? They're literally nothing alike at all. They're two separate factions with two separate ideologies and how they produce things. And yeah, but no. So right off the bat, obviously the Tau Va, or the greater will and the greater good, rather, is the credence and sort of the general guidelines of life that the Tau follow. If you do anything under the Tau Va, it is to serve the Tau Va, to serve the greater good, i.e., you're serving the ethereals, and the ethereals' goals and ambitions are obviously propped up over the veil of the greater good, the Tau Va. What does that kind of simulate, and what does that kind of remind us of? Maybe perhaps the imperial truth, or now, at least now, the cult of the emperor. But now in 30K, it would have been the imperial truth. So this upstart faction, or, race of people, of aliens rather, are just following their own creed. And of course, they use this creed as a guise to sort of follow their own ambitions, and that kind of leads them down a slippery slope. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, that's one way they're similar, but I'd also like to say another way that they're very, very similar to the Imperium that I don't think a lot of people specifically like to touch on are the castes. Quite frankly, I enjoy all the different ways the castes work separately, autonomously from each other, but are also very interconnected, much like the Imperium when you have the ecclesiarchy, the, the priests of Mars, the Mechanicus. You have, the common, the IDF, the PDF, the, Astra Militarum, and in general, like everything works autonomously in Space Marines and sort of, internally as well. The Tau operate in the same faction. The Tau, you have the Earth caste, which are basically the counterpart to Mechanicus, reverse engineering technology. They come apart mainly. There's a scene in the book, Crisis of Faith, Farsight, where an Earth caste member is sort of going over how Geller fields work and how the humans have achieved faster than light, and the guardsmen are just basically like, yeah, we can do faster than light, bro, and they're getting interrogated. So how? And this guardsman like, I don't know, bro. We're just that good, because they literally have no conception. They understand how to use the machine, but not the intricacies because it's so old and ancient, rather. But seeing as how that is, we also get to see them, reverse engineer it and question and innovation, because innovation is not a sin to them. They don't worship the Omnissiah. This is not a relevant conversation for someone of the Earth cast. And then we have the Water cast, who are the diplomats, the representatives who are sent to planets to establish some sort of connection or baseline relationship, or at least establish a working relationship with said planets, like on Daleth Prime, which is currently, or was currently, it's in the Damocles Gulf being besieged by Space Marines and all that fun stuff. But we're not gonna. And the Fire cast are the warriors. So of course your boy over here is obviously gonna love when they get involved in anything, mainly Farsight. So again, they are very similar, but I also would like to clarify too, since this is more of a video about the things that I learned and the things you may not know. The Tau are not pushovers, and I know, oh dude, of course they're not. They can just like destroy you from hundreds of meters away, dude. Of course we know that. Slow your roll, because I'm kind of referring to their personalities. So when I pictured the Tauva and how it was, enacted as the will of all Tau and how it should be furthered and observed, previously when I just kind of had meme knowledge, I was going through, okay, the Tau are cool, but like they all seem like pushovers to me. They just seem like losers, which, listen, I said it in a previous video. If you haven't read something and you're kind of basing it off of excerpts or YouTube videos, you're doing yourself a disservice, and I did myself a disservice until I started reading. And then I saw the personalities like Farsight, Shadow Sun, Pure Tide, even though Pure Tide doesn't really speak yet because he's sort of like, spoiler alert, like dying or whatever, and they're trying to map his neurological synapses to adapt an engram so he can live on, but we'll get into that too. And others in Farsight's group right now, because the enclaves aren't a thing right now, because he's still associated with the Tau, and he's not like a offshoot of them right now, kind of serving with them, but away from them. There are Tau who thirst for battle, who have their own shady ambitions, and that is not how I pictured them. I thought they were all like communal, and they are to a degree. But they do remind me of Imperials. They're really serving one greater purpose, motivation, ideology, but they use it to their own interpretations, which leads them to manipulate it so they can use that greater good to further whatever goals they want. But mainly this, of course, applies to the ethereals who use their like pheromone, magical mind influencing to get the Tau to do whatever. So yes, really cool stuff. And also the Tau are very much xenophobic as humans are in a way. Now, you can't just say that, because then of course people are going to bring up the point that, Connor, don't they have auxiliary races like the Kroot and other, various Xenos life forms? Yes, of course they do. But when I say xenophobic, I would kind of say it in a sense that it's more passive. When obviously the Imperium of Man, when you see an alien, you're going to go, that guy's blue. We're going to have to kill the whole planet. Now, when the Tau see someone who's rather strange, and of course they initiate them and assimilate them into the greater good, you would think the discrimination wouldn't be there, but it is. The Tau look upon other species who aren't Tau as either expendable or kind of barbaric in their own way, but of course they serve the greater good, so you have to permiss their mere existence because it is a fundamental benefit to the greater good and therefore to the ethereals. But they make comments throughout the book about, how gross humans are, how gross other aliens are, and how they really only serve a certain purpose. And it's just fascinating to me, because that wasn't the impression I thought I was going to get from them. But that kind of makes them more human, even though they're not. It makes them more digestible to the reader. Because again, I can't confirm how a billion-year-old, space race Eldar would interpret the world, because I'm not that. I'm a human. I can't interpret how Space Marines are, but at least I can kind of get it, right? With the Tau and the way they act, I can get it because I've seen it previously from other Imperial stories and even Chaos stories, and it's more appealing to the reader. And it's just informational, because this is really good building for the lore for Tau. This was a really good book to start with, because I went online, I was like, what should I do? This is it. So now that we got all the interesting, what you would learn, fun stuff out of the way, let's kind of dive into the more lore 7-hour fall asleep videos to shout out Ashen Hollow, if that is his name. I hope I got it right. But let's talk about characters, because I'm a big, literature guy, and I do enjoy delving into who characters are and kind of trying to analyze them. Farsight, from my first impressions of him as I'm still reading this book, is fascinating to me. In a setting full of ego and overly ambitious characters who would sacrifice everything to achieve goals, whether that is from a loyalist perspective, Chaos, Eldar, Yanari, or Harlequins, orcs, any setting, any faction. Farsight is truly a breath of fresh air in the sense that he is a warrior who is level-headed, who understands not to be overly ambitious and to balance when to be assertive and when to be more, lackadaisical in his approach to things. He's an interesting character, someone who has clearly followed the ways of his mentor, Pure Tide, who also has been mentioned to sort of mentor not only Farsight, but Shadow Sun as well. And Pure Tide is essentially the crux of the Tau. This man is a military genius, and without him, without his knowledge, and if it's lost, would dangerously set back the Tau, as it's implied in the book. But again, Farsight is just a warrior. And yeah, that's a really simple way to describe it, but it's anything but simple. The man is a philosopher more than he is a warrior, but those two things can be mutually exclusive. He understands when to fight, when to be diplomatic, when to balance out his anger, when to be anything like a good leader should. And it's really great to watch, as it is in really any faction. But he just exudes aura, which is a funny thing to say for a character who's not real, but he does. This guy really does have a commanding presence. Shadow Sun, on the other hand, has not been as active in this book, but you can also tell from his thoughts of her that she is indeed a worthy rival, because she has been also kind of schooled by Pure Tide. But Shadow Sun is kind of a little bit different in her approach from what he thinks of her. But again, it's kind of a mutual respect / rivalry. Like he likes that she's very capable as a warrior and respects her, but he dislikes her for her approach of things and just how she is personally. So there's not a lot to cover for her on this aspect. So covering that, he does also have an AI ally who I think is like a copied engram of a previously fallen Tau warrior. And this part, and forgive me because I can't remember the name off the top of my head, it's been a long day, is very interesting because they have a talk while they're kind of entering through the Damocles Gulf and trying to reclaim worlds in their own little Great Crusade. But it's not called that. It's called the Great Reclamation or whatever. But besides that, he has this conversation with his, AI ally, and the guy basically says in terms of that what a dreadnought would say is, I'm kept in this cold prison, and sometimes I wish it would be easier if I was just actually dead and not sort of a living weapon. And it was fascinating to me because there's not a lot to dive into on this character, but I also think that kind of adds to the enjoyment. Dreadnoughts are rather tragic, besides maybe Bjorn, but I don't know a lot about Bjorn. But when I see things like Malkarian, the war sage from the Night Lord's Omnibus, and I kind of coincide with how most dreadnoughts are, and even one from the Word Bearer's Omnibus. You get the picture obviously painted that it's a really awful experience. You're basically in limbo, and you're just barely alive, and you're killing, and you don't know what time it is, what year it is. They still think it's the Great Crusade, some think it's the Heresy, or they've all lost sanity, and it's tragic. And when you see this in various factions, whether it is the Imperials or Chaos or Tau or even Eldar, it's always a unique perspective because it's so tragic, and I love to see how each person who's entombed deals with it, and that was just quite frankly fascinating. But the characters are all phenomenal. And I know it sounds like I'm going crazy on it right now, but just to be realistic, guys, it's fun. It's a very good book, and the Tau are just not what I pictured. They are just so similar to the Imperium. It's kind of crazy to me. And also the memes about them not meleeing or not doing melee is kind of friggin' insane to me. Because reading this book, they've been pretty melee heavy, and even in book, by the way, this happened in the book. I think it's a Ultramarine captain, or at least acting chapter master captain, or one of the two. I think he's like an active chapter master since one is like stuck in stasis or something. He says, yeah, the Tau basically don't melee. They have an aversion to melee, which I found comical because, sure, they do because they're much better at distance warfare. Those boys don't shy away from slashing you with a sword. There's a reason I opened this up with, like I studied the blade, because Farsight literally has a magical blade that adds to his lifespan with every kill. You don't see that anywhere else. I think that's pretty badass. And I also kind of get, but not really, the anime comparisons. Yeah, they're in like mechs and stuff, but like they're not really like, like the commie, weeaboo aesthetic that I think a lot of people meme them out to be. Sure, the way that they operate is like very like commune in a way. But again, there's that passive discrimination that was mentioned, and obviously there's a hierarchy with the castes and how they operate and how they deal with each other. And there's the ethereal. So I can't really say I 100% get the memes, but also they're memes. They're just trying to be funny, but it's a good, listen, Crisis of Faith is an awesome book, and I wish I gave the Tau the credit they deserve, because quite frankly, they're just so cool. And you're watching them fight Space Marines. I'm rooting for them because the Space Marines in this are like depicted as villains, because listen, the Imperium are objectively evil, but I'm always going to support humanity. I'm a humanity first type of guy, except I'm a Chaos fan, so the Corpse Emperor can get lost, kid. But, jokes aside, really, the Tau are quite awesome. And, just get rid of memes for a second and get rid of everything. If you know nothing about the Tau, if what I haven't, discussed right now hasn't gotten you at least a little bit interested, they may not be for you. Or I may not be the guy to tell you about them. But the Tau are great, and the Tau are super, super cool. And if this one book can really just entice me from one chapter, I imagine it could relatively achieve the same effect for you. So if you know nothing about the Tau and you are interested in it, and maybe you play tabletop and you have Tau and you just know their codexes and baseline level lore, but you haven't really immersed yourself in this faction, go read Crisis of Faith. Go read that, please. Go ham on that thing. Go learn about Farsight and Pure Tide and Shadow Sun. All of them, they're just interesting, and the Tau rocks. That's all I gotta say. That's the whole thing of this video. If I haven't surmised everything I've learned about the Tau, they rock and they're super cool. Memes are funny about them, but also just memes. Please go read the lore. I promise it's good. Anyways, thank you for watching, and if you stayed this long, here's a little special thing. I have an orc book. I have the Prophet of the Wog, and I'm going to do a little video on that soon when I'm done reading it. It's a short book. But I figured since I'm doing this little series or whatever where I'm introducing myself to new factions, I would let you guys decide, and I'll probably put out a poll later tomorrow or later tonight, what you guys think I should read next to introduce myself to really any faction. And when I say faction, Eldar, everything's included, but you can really go deep. Death Watch, Ecclesiarchy, Sisters of Battle. Seriously, anything you guys want, vote for it or drop it down in the comments. I'll give it a shot. Listen, I'm really liking this learn. I don't know what to call the series. Maybe I think I'll just do it like a World Eater learns about blank faction. So if you guys want me to like immerse myself in any more factions of your choice, drop them down in the comments. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I am out of here.